Okay, all right. So most likely that we will have a, excuse me, a welcome note first.
Dr. Kang, over to you.
Okay, Honey, welcome back. And also to all our participants and all the speakers as well. Okay, good to see you, Honey. Okay, Honey's muted. Never mind, I continue. Okay, today we'll have another webinar on the future of work. Okay, despite the calendar invite that says the future of webinar, which is incorrectly titled, it should be actually the future of work rather than future of webinar. Okay, this time we will be talking about the millennials and Gen Z and how they will be changing the future of work. Okay, so thank you very much to everyone who's participating in this, and over to you, Honey. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kang, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be able to be here, despite the fact that I think we've been doing this for close to a year, and this is our future of work number 6. Apparently, we still have some technologically challenged situation, which is what's happening right now. So I hope that I would be able to do justice to today's session, despite the fact I'm logging in, not using my laptop today. All right, so welcome everyone who is here today, and I would also like to welcome all of our speakers, Mr. Saravanan, Mr. Gordon Kwong, and Encik Nick Razin. So all of these three speakers, they are subject matter experts in their own rights, and I would like to welcome all of them today. Today's topic is very, very interesting because we're going to talk about the millennials and the Gen Z who are already reshaping the future of work. It is said that there are now more than 50% of these two generations. They are here in the world of work, and they are already changing at how the world of work is progressing. Now, the millennials generation who are born between the 1980 and 2000, they are have entered the employability space. The Gen Z, they are also called the change generation, simply because their fluidity in using technology. But today, what we're going to talk about are several, I would say, topics that I would think be best to be discussed in such a way that that these two generations be understood for their own merits, and some of the challenges for those who are obviously not in the millennials or Gen Z. So we're going to look at the perspectives from our three speakers, Mr. Saravanan, Mr. Gordon Kwong, and Mr. Nick Razin. So first and foremost, I would like to invite Mr. Saravanan, who is the Senior Director of Student Experience, University Technology Petronas, to say a few words about yourself. Sarah?
Hi, Honey. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So for those who are participating in this event, thank you so much for making your time and being here today. So like how Honey introduced, I'm Saravanan. So later, guys, if you have any questions, you can just put, Sarah, this is my question. I'm perfectly fine with it. Okay, to start with, I'm not part of the millennial nor the Gen Z. Okay, myself, Honey, all belongs to the other group that is currently working with millennials and Gen Z. Okay, so throughout my career experience, which spans at least about 25 years, I've been in hotel industry, fast food industry, finally landed in education industry. And in education industry, I started off as a lecturer, then moved on and so forth, until today I'm managing Student Experience Center. So along the way, as you see with the dynamics of where I've been, I've worked with different group of generations. And I think in the past 10 years, I have had privilege working with more of millennials and Gen Z, either working with them, interviewing them, and so on. So I had a chance to understand how things has changed from where I started or we started to where things are now. So I think I'm definitely excited of sharing my input and also giving a bit of guidance here and there, which may or may not be relatable with the current group. So I hope you guys can have a good take home back today. Yep. Over to you, Hani.
Okay, thanks so much. I think the first time we met was pre-pandemic. It was over a face-to-face session, which I so look forward to.
Yes.
Okay, so I do have a list of discussion topics to discuss with you, Sarah, and I know that there will be a lot of things that you may be able to share with our audience today. Just quickly moving on to Mr. Gordon Kwong. Gordon, welcome. If you can take a minute to introduce yourself on your role with a big pharmacy Malaysia.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Hani. My name is Gordon Kwong, and I'm the Talent Acquisitions and Employer Branding Manager in Big Pharmacy Healthcare. Prior to that, I was in retail industry as well, but particularly in consumer electronics. And now, with similar kind of role, I'm into the healthcare line. Okay, right now in Big Pharmacy, as you can see, the massive plan of expansion is very much different from compared to before the pandemic. Okay, with the pandemic, even foster the expansion plan of Big Pharmacy. And now we're recruiting talent, a lot of talents for the business. All right, back to you, Hani.
I think that's very awesome. It will be very, very helpful for our audience today to understand what is the perspective coming from the employers. So just a quick question. I'm going to teach a little bit, Gordon. So which generation you might be?
Okay. I was born in 1980s. Okay. So back then in 1980s, people call us as Gen X. But when I go to the latest kind of, we have a lot of generations now. So I was relured to, I think I would become a millennials right now.
Early millennials.
Early millennials.
Okay.
Right. So I'm the first batch to embrace the technology, digitalizations.
And I'm sure that you've seen quite a bit over the years at how the landscape, or rather the generation, has evolved over the few years, yeah? You know, the adaptability and all that. So I think that was interesting to share with the audience today and see how what are those things that have actually changed or not. We're not quite sure. So okay, thank you so much, Gordon. And moving on to Mr. Nick Razin. Nick Razin.
Yeah, hi, Hani, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this program. First of all, I'm Nick Razin, currently culture transformation in Post Malaysia. So, bit of fact is that I'm actually still new in Post Malaysia. So, bear in mind that I can contribute at least what I've known so far. Yeah. But before that, basically, as everyone is Gen Z, what's Gordon is? Millennials, eh? So basically, I'm Gen Z representation of Gen Z. So what I can contribute is that maybe a bit of how my experience, moving into a new company and then learning from scratch, trying to adapt. And just see whether how does companies actually absorb, or try to cater to our generation.
Yeah. So can I hazard a guess that you will be in the early millennial as well, similar to Gordon?
Yeah, 96.
Okay.
No worries. Yeah, cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. It would be great to also understand from another early millennial, I would say, and see what kind of stories that we can share with our audience today in addressing some of the, some of the challenges and also some of the benefits, I would say, to have the millennials and Gen Z in our current and future work, and see how we can manage those expectations coming both from employers as well as from this generation. So thanks so much, Razin, for addressing that, for introducing yourself. Okay, so now that we have gotten to know a little bit more about our three speakers, what I've done was I prepared quite a bit of discussion items to, I would say, to discuss with our speakers. Now, we know for a fact that, the Gen Z and the millennials, they have the tendency to be a little bit, I would say, fluid in their outlook of career. So the tendency to look at something more meaningful and something that motivates them a little bit more than the previous role, for example, is very much higher in comparison to the previous generation. So we know that, for example, the previous generation would stay a little bit longer, on average 5 to 6 years, some as long as 10 years and 15 years, whereby the millennials and the Gen Z are most likely not wanting to do that for a lot of reasons. So the question here is that, just reflecting on your own experiences for all our three speakers, and I did take a look at all your LinkedIn profile, and you do have had the working experience from one organization to another. So this question, I would go first to Sarah. So Sarah, you've had quite a few numbers of really, exciting roles that you've had over the years. I've got a question for you. How do you know when to shift to the next role? Sarah, that's for you, Sarah. I'm curious.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Okay, so actually, if over the 22, 23 years of experience I've ever had throughout my career, I have actually jumped about 4 different companies. Sorry, now with the fifth one. I think the longest being one of the company I stayed for about 11 years. Okay, so which I think I will agree with you, Hani. Currently, we don't, with the current group that I interview most of the time, you see the span of the time they have been with an organization is normally between 3 to 5 years. Even if you can get 5 years, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
When those times you can see easily people staying like 20 years. My mom stayed with the company for 29 years, started there and ended there. So I think for me, it was always about what I have done in the current role. Do I see any growth in that area or not? If I'm unable to see that growth coming in the next 1 year or 2 years, that's the time I will start to look out. Okay, what else can I do? And I think for me, it has always been not just the role itself, but for the industry in a bigger scope. Like me being in so-called, even though I'm in education industry, but I actually manage with student experience. So I think it goes beyond just students, like parents and so on, right? So it's like, what else can I bring to the table? And can I do that with the current company or not? If not, what can I do in the new place? So I think that always have been my reflection points. And at some point, it helps me to decide whether, okay, this is the time, do it. Yeah, that's always been mine.
Well, that's pretty deep then, because that takes a lot of reflection. What have I done well here? What else can I do and all that, versus those, the emotionally charged of looking at something shiny new, for example, and even for my dad, he's with his profession, he started over there and he ended up over there.
Yep.
I see myself doing exactly that, but I you came from. Very, very interesting. Now let's hear from Gordon. Gordon, what was your experience? When did you know, or rather, how would you know when to go to the next role? So what makes you want to go, or motivates you for that?
All right. All right. If you're looking prior to I commence my work, I mean my expertise in recruitment field, back then I was do what I want to do, follow your heart. And I started actually first batch of millennials. We tend to started the new era of e-commerce. So I started my e-commerce business back then.
Nice.
But more that was more than 10 years ago, isn't it? More than 10 years ago. And the entire environment, backcode environment, is not designed for e-commerce yet. And with that, when I see it is not developed yet, so I changed my career. Okay, until it comes to a what I call it, a matured environment. Okay, now when we're talking about a change of job compared to older generations, if you compare to my dad who born in 1940s, baby boomers. Okay, whenever I'm talking to my dad, okay, I'm changing a new job. So
yes.
the first response is that, are you not doing well in your company?
Oh my goodness.
So that is the impression from the older generations, because the loyalty and the perceptions that you would be good if you're working in the same company. But in millennials, okay, we are looking for another kind of career opportunity. All right, challenges, which is something new and it's difficult to be understood by my dad, baby boomer.
Yes.
So I take a longer duration time to explain to him. Okay, so now back to your question again. Now I will rather look into what I want to be achieved in the next 10 years or 20 years and find your directions. So figure out what you want and whether it's feasible to proceed or not. Else, if you're rushing to a place that is not sustainable, it might be a challenge for you in your future. Okay, and the career opportunity that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. So the thinking process in comparison to a previous generation, not too far, right, is a little bit different, because obviously the baby boomers, that's where I'm almost at, actually. The thinking process is that if I were to leave, that means there's something wrong with me, that I'm not doing well, right?
Yes.
It's not about the organization or motivation or anything like that. It is the other way around. Very, very interesting. Whereas when you decided to go and explore outside, it would be based on a few considerations. And most likely your own motivation or sustainability of a business or something like that. Very, very interesting. I'm curious to hear from Nate Razin.
Yeah. Sure.
Before this, so what's the story there?
Yeah. Let me share you a story that maybe some of the fresh grads or even a newly young executive trying out in embracing working life. So coming from myself, the story started as an intern. Yeah, let me go back a few years, which is still recently new for me, I guess 2-3 years back, 4 years. So what I can say that during my internship days, it was pretty exciting because I was in IOI Properties Berhad. So basically, I've learned a lot about designing, where that's part of my passion. So during that time, basically I learned how to, make videos, how to become a host, how to, talk to different level of executives, Other than that, it was a bit saddening because I'm unable to continue there as a young executive. However, I got the opportunity to move into a so-called investment property company So after that, I was in a hospitality line and hotels. So that time I spent around 1 year plus, almost 2 years, moving around the States, recording, shooting, doing content to increase our awareness in terms of social media awareness, Facebook, and then other than that, it's being used as a marketing collaterals. And then after going back to your question, Hani, how do I know that it's about time for change? Is a bit subjective for me because although comparing my generation to others, I could say that I came from a so-called medium class family, I guess. So the survival rate is not as high in comparison to other generation that comes from the lower income family. So in terms of that, I could see if they have the opportunity, there's a lot of factors to consider, whereby in terms of myself, it's more on whether the opportunity is something that I feel it is worth it, or it is something that I want to explore. So a funny story is when I was in the hospitality line, I was actually a full-time staff. So I actually took a leap of faith to actually join Post Malaysia as a management trainee. So as you all know, management trainee is normally contractual staff. So basically during that time, it was during COVID itself. So it was a lot of I could see threats, positions that being frozen, opportunities suddenly closed, due to COVID and restrictions. But then, however, with faith and then taking that step, I tendered my first resignation as a executive, and then go and enter a newly company which has been in Malaysia for so long, over 200 years, and inshallah 200 years more to come. So and then that's quite a big move for me, as a starting from zero, learning back, the basics, get to know people in a huge organization. I could say it was a bit of culture shock, but then after a while, I believe, with all the experience that I've encountered less than a year, it was an eye-opening experience for me. So in terms of what I can say towards fresh graduates or even young executives, like Gordon said just now, even you got to follow your heart. But you know when the right time comes, the opportunity comes. It's all about you taking that leap of faith to just try out new things. Yeah, I guess.
My goodness,
yeah.
That was quite a leap of faith, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And moving from one place to another, and very, very interesting, Nick, that you actually mentioned about the family background at the same time.
Yeah.
Because so far I've never had anyone having this conversation about generational gaps or opportunities within a certain generation versus the family background or economic background. Social background. So I find that very, very interesting, and maybe perhaps during our course of interaction today, we might be able to come together and perhaps discuss it as well. Having said that, I think what really stood up between all of our three speakers is that there have been somehow some sort of motivations to move from one role to another. It might be opportunities, it might be, but certainly it sounded like the trail of thoughts are a little bit different. It sounded like it. It sounded like it. So thank you so much for sharing that. But so coming back to Sarah, I want to come back to you because there was something that you have mentioned, you know, about some of the one of the roles that you had before. It lasted for about 11 years. Why 11 years? What made you stay?
Okay, so at that point of time, I think, okay, Ani, so just going back to what Gordon and Nick shared, just to touch a bit on that, I think the current group, this generation, they are a bit more of bold risk takers, I would say. I think that was lacking a bit in our team, our group. I think even though at some point we decided to move, we always wanted to be sure whether this is the right move to take. You know, whether it is going to benefit of me or not in the long term. Am I going to the right organization next that is more sustainable and things like that? I think probably it's also how the whole market was designed at that point of time, like how Gordon mentioned about e-commerce and all that thing. At our point when we started, it was not there yet. So I think there was a lot of big question marks of like, again, like what Nick and Gordon also mentioned, the questions our parents would throw to us when you're getting a job. Okay, have you checked the background of the company? Is it strong? Are they good paymasters? You know, that kind of things that always be the thing. So for me, I think being 11 years in that one organization, that was right after I came back from Singapore. So I used to work in Singapore for a while. Then I came back and I was with IUKL now, known as KLIUC at that point. So I was with them as lecturer and then moved on to another role, which took me about 11 years before I decided to move on. What kept me in that job was actually the fun of working with the younger group. I think that was the best part of it. Yeah.
Cool. So cool.
So I think it kept me young at heart, you know, being with that group all the time. And I also find that was really good for me to pass back the knowledge that I've learned in marketing area, you know, packaged together with my experience in hotel industry and fast food industry before that, and you know, ability to serve and so on. But I think towards the last 2-3 years is where I realized my passion was, you know, I still love teaching, but I think I could do more if I take up bigger role where it covers the student affairs and things like that. I'm able to be in a position where I can help students more to make changes in their life. I think that pushed me to take up bigger role and eventually took me out of KLIUC and put me where I was for the next 7 years. I was, you know, with another institution. So I think to answer back, I think again, the 11 years, because I enjoyed what I was doing at that point. And I think end of the day, all of us are like that. As long as you are enjoying it and there's always a growth opportunity there, I think we will remain there until it comes to a point that you start having a question, what's next? Yeah.
You know, very, very interesting. I'm always curious about the reason why people stay for a very long period, right? So one of the things that I pick up from you is that you actually enjoyed it. So here's the thing, Sarah, I've also heard this from those who stay on an average of about 3 to 4 years. They also enjoy it. But apparently, I think there are some other factors that make them go as well, which are bigger than the joy factor. What do you think?
I agree with you, and I'm seeing that more and more nowadays. Like I would say, I think there's also a question in our chat box. This person actually asked whether the organization structure and business strategy has influenced the movements or not of people, which I think now it's becoming evident, and I think we'll be talking about this area later on as part of our today webinar. But I do agree, nowadays people are looking into much bigger things when they join a company. Along their career, you know, things and all that. It's not just about, if you ask people who have been around for 20 years, 15 years, on top of them enjoying the job, the other thing they always talk about is the group of friends they have created. They, you know, the sense of family, whatever it is, I'm here for you, you are here for me. they work together, and it becomes harder when you have been with that group for a while and thinking of moving to another place and starting all over again and things like that. So at times people, like, even though they have pockets of issues in the current organization or the job, they compromise it. They say it's okay because I have a bigger team that supports my journey. But I think nowadays people are a bit more open to explore, see new things and move on. And they want to really make an impact on the industry or the area they are attached to. So I can see within 3 years or 4 years, people like, what's next for me? How can I be the person in this area? So when this opportunity comes along, they move. I think that's what's happening. And I'm seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, agree with you. And it will be quite interesting as well to hear from the industry perspective. Gordon, have you seen changes over the years? I'm sure that you've big hires, over a spectrum of talent, from the Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z to the more mature generation, I would say, to fill up some of the headcount or talents that is required within the big pharmacy. What are the things that you see in terms of the differences, key differences? Care to share?
Right. And in the past 10 years in the recruitment field, I can see that it's not that the generations or millennials, Generation Z or millennials, that switching job very in a short period of time, but then actually it applies to all generations. In fact, if you're asking me, okay, have you noticed any differences? Okay, so one different, no different is that there are generations who job hop as well in every generation. Secondly, okay, in terms of the attitude towards the job they're applying, okay, because why we do criticize a lot of millennials or Generation Z is that they are young, okay? If you pull back to the previous generation when they are young, it's similar kind of, changing job, attitude is happening as well. Okay, I'm not trying to defend millennials. All right, so when it comes to preparations and experience dealing with people, interviewing, the Generation X or baby boomers, they have more experience in this area that makes them outstanding from, especially in terms of job search. If you are looking for someone who have a certain attitude or interpersonal skill. And when it comes to the newer generations, when we do hiring, we can notice that the Generation Z, millennials, they have more tech savvy. I think we have been mentioning a lot of times for the past 10 years, 20 years, talking about technology, how technology impacts us and how to impact the generation across all, from whatever age you can name it. All right. All right. So if you asking me again, I will say the same as well.
So again, it depends on where it sounded like some of these ideas are perception over something concrete. Yeah. And I think for Razin, who's involved in change and transformation of an organization, whereby his current organization is going through some, I'm very sure, some massive changes all throughout. I've been a keen observer, Razin, with all these new changes over the past many months. So that's why I'm really excited to speak to you today as well and see, because knowing for a fact that under for your organization, it's 200 years old. It's long. It has a long history of, seeing all kinds of talents coming in and out and all that. And the majority have been there for the longest time. So what can you see between, the current generation that's entering to the workforce of your organization, you know, the millennials and Gen Z versus the ones who are already there for the past 25 years or 30 years? What are the differences that you can see, or the similarities that you can see based from your experience so far?
Thanks, Annie. Wow. So you've been excited to actually talk to me, eh? So what I could say is, coming from a culture change perspective, yeah. So we can see that the behavior of people that has been with the organization for even 20+ years, 30 years, even some 40 years. After SPM, they entered Post Malaysia, and then they started as a Karani, and then even postman, and then they go up to the ladder, and then that's how they sustain themselves in the organization for so long. Yeah? And for sure, we can see that they are proud, working in Post Malaysia. That's the first thing. And then when they're talking about work and change and even adaptation, they have been going through for the longest time, especially the people that has been 20 years and above in an organization. So because culture change or even any transformation, it travels with time. As time goes on, it requires change, improvement, innovation, and even technology. So when we talk about technology back then, it was the screen of a computer is only this big, and then nowadays it's this big, and even it goes more advanced than what we can do 30 years back then.
Yeah.
So trying to teach, trying to learn, trying to enforce the technology onto the people that have been 20 years plus in an organization might be we can see it as a challenge, but that's when the opportunity in terms of talent, gaining young talents plays a crucial role as well, because they'll be mainly focused on technology, trying to get the young segments of customers that is part of our database. So trying to align all those key areas is definitely an ongoing initiative as we go along.
Very, very interesting. I read somewhere that it was said that Gen Z is the best fit generation for now, post-pandemic. Imagine that.
Yeah.
We're out of work, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely not in the cities, but we're going to fight.
Yeah, sure.
It's really, really interesting, because I think of all the things that we've been presented itself in terms of technology. I also think that there are a lot of things that we can learn from each generation at the same time. I have a big question for all three of you, and this question has been asked to me many times over as a career coach. Now, I want to hear from the three of you your thoughts about changing a job versus changing a career. So changing a job versus changing a career. What does it mean to you, and how would you like to highlight this changing a job versus changing a career to our audience today? Sarah, I think you may have a thing or two to say about changing a job versus changing a career, because there are some stories that I read about you that I think resonates with this question.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Annie. Okay. So I do come across this question as well to some of the students that I speak to, or the younger generation that I deal with. Most important, I think, before you switch or you even plan your career growth, I think very important is to understand the difference between job and a career. Job is something you get at the early part of your life. You complete your studies, you go out, and you just get a job because you just need that money to roll your life. Okay, there are bills to pay. Some of us, have the privilege with being with parents, and somehow our expenses are taken care of until your parents say that it's okay, you can take your time, get a job that fits your heart, your soul, and everything. But not many of us are blessed with those kind of things. So today you graduate, tomorrow you have to get a job. So I think that's the job part of it. So when we talk about job, it may or may not be what you love to do, or you wanted to do, or you wanted to build on later on. But career is something that you're thinking in a longer or a bigger perspective that touches your heart and your soul, that you want to give back to the society, to the community, or an area that you really see yourself blooming. Like for example, for me, when I started off, the job was I was with hotel, restaurants, front office, and things like that, and moved on to fast food industry, cleaning tables, serving, and things like that. But eventually, when I found out that my passion is in customer experience, customer service area, that's when I ventured into lecturing and moved on to where I am now. So I think it's important for you to understand that, because at some point, the reflection will tell you whether you're ready to take the career move or not. The other thing is that sometimes you would have studied for something else, for example. But then again, as you move on through your career, your job, you will find your passion in something else. So that's where you will see that, oh, you know what, I studied this, but I think my passion is in another area which I really want to develop further. So I think that's when you start seeing things in a bigger perspective and the area that can help you to grow in that sense. So if you talk about job, normally job switching comes with package that comes along. If I can get a better pay, better perks, things like that, and so on. But when you talk about career, it's not so much about just the salary alone. It's more about what can you learn in the new place, how impactful your role can be in the new place. I think that's very, very important. So for me, that's the difference. And this is where you find it. And again, talking about it also comes with levels of motivation in your life. Like how Nick mentioned just now about family background, the economic status, and all that. When you're submerged in it, it's mostly about the job, earning, and making sure things are clear. But I think when you hit a certain point where you're more stable, that's where you start thinking about your career growth. And you plan out for the next 20, 30 years, I want to work, where do I want to end? And some people are good enough. I think some of the millennials here do think about that as well. They think beyond their retirement age. When we talk about retirement age, if you go and talk to about my age people, when you ask them, what is your retirement age? They'll always tell about, 50, 55, or 60. But when you ask the current millennials, what's your retirement age about? 35, 40. Yeah. They're thinking of that, and they want to have this, silent income coming in here and there. So they want to build that kind of concept where they can really enjoy their life, their time, their money at much earlier age while doing their job. Honey, just to share with you, recently I went for a holiday in Chirating. I met this girl who was doing this fire dance thing right outside of a bar that is currently doing 4 jobs, 3 is all online jobs. She's only 24. She's doing online job. She's earning well. She can work from anywhere. And this fire dance thing is just her passion. And also she earns from that, from the hotel and all that. So you see, if we talk about our generation, will we ever take this kind of risk, or will we want to venture into something like this? We would say, never mind, I'll wait until I retire, then I'll go and learn my fire dance and try to do that. But the current generation is completely new, and I salute them for that. Yeah, that will be my input, honey. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that was interesting. I read that post on your LinkedIn, and I thought that was very interesting, because as we talk to a lot more people in the younger generation, I also realized that they are open to a higher risk defined by certain generation, like getting having 4 jobs at one go, traveling the world, they become digital nomads. And to certain generation, this is like no anchor. What is this? Scary. But apparently it works.
It works.
Yeah, it works only if you know how.
I think it's important to understand how do you manage it. I think you have to look at it in a broader perspective. And I think one thing I have to salute the millennials, whether it's the family support, guidance, or the education system they are going through, or the kind of information they are exposed to at this point of time, makes them think in a bigger way and helps them to grow. I mean, like, I'm not denying there are also things that they can also learn from the other group, but I think that sense of risk-taking, I salute you guys.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. One thing I know for sure is the energy that they bring into the workplace. I think that it's just, you know, it's almost always positive, lots of energy and lots of sunshine, I will call them.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Sarah. I thought that would be quite interesting to ask you about, you know, the change of job versus changing of career. What do you think, Gordon, on this particular topic, changing of job versus changing career? How do you see this happening as you are, you know, recruiting for talent across your organization?
All right, Hani. Okay, I do very agree with Sarah mentioned about the job versus career. If I may shorten it, okay. If I ask you a question, okay, have you heard of jobless?
Yes.
Have you heard of careerless?
All right.
Yeah,
this is good.
When it comes to current generations, all right, and if you compare, and actually, you can see when I do a lot of hiring and meeting with a lot of job seeker, and in fact, a lot, even though they are jobless, but they are not careerless. They have their own career without any job. You can still have your career, you can still explore in your career. And if you want to specialize in one, probably several professions, you can look at, for example, a freelancer that we're providing to a lot of services. Probably you have engaged with a lot of freelancer, okay? And if I link to a story that I have in the past few months, I'm trying to engage with some of the designer, okay? Like what Sarah said, they have several jobs. And in fact, they have several assignments at once, okay? Because they're getting the assignment, how they get a paycheck is by how many assignments they have completed. All right, so they engage with agency, they engage with the freelancer portal, and probably sometimes they have a contract. Okay, so these are the changes, and this is the differences if you compare to whether you have a job or you're careerless. If audience, if your parents is asking you whether you have a career or you have a job, okay, you can take this as an example. You can still get your paycheck monthly or even weekly and make a living of it. You can make a living on your career, okay, not solely on your job. All right.
Wow. Okay. Slightly different perspective, but I think I understand where it comes from. What about you, Razin? Job versus career?
Wow, that's something I look forward to in terms of career, I guess. So I'm at the stage of finding myself as well for now, because you know, coming from a communication background, endeavoring into marketing, comms, and then now, you know, culture. But then in terms of building my career, I guess my 5 years plan would be finding the similarities rather than holding to a so-called career. You know, if I were to change my career, it does have similarities in terms of, you know, communication. You know, as myself, you know, my strength would be in terms of talking. I like to communicate. I like to, you know, exchange ideas. So if there is similarities, then I would focus on that, but then not very particular in terms of what do I do. You get what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it resonates to what Sarah was mentioning earlier. Finding that alignment, or rather the sweet spot, I think, in getting that skills, passion, interest, and values at the same time, all of align, then I think you would find the sweet spot, i.e. the career. Otherwise, it will become a job that we do, I suppose, to go on living. Yeah. And you know, enjoy at the same time. But I think the higher purpose is to have all these things aligned, and that's where we find what is that career path. I think it's something of it requires self-awareness and self-reflection to also understand, is this a job or is this a career?
Yeah.
I think over the years. Okay, so something that will be a meaningful topic to, you know, have a conversation with friends and I Sarah at the same time. Okay, so I have another question. This is something that has been happening, especially throughout the pandemic. So we are entering into the endemic, but for the past 2 years, I hope that no one really forgets about the 2 years that we've been under lockdown and have gone through all kinds of, I would say, scenarios and situations. I also have seen a good fair share of talents moving from one organization to another due to a change of job role or downsizing. But some of them I've seen changing jobs because of some pressure or rather situations, and that has affected their mental being. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mental being. Is there any relationship? I will say, let me just take a note here. All right. So do you think, is there any relationship between mental wellness within an organization that a person experience to changing a job or a career? So basically the question is, you know, sometimes when you are in an organization, you're doing this as a job or as a role, and you move because of, you know, there might be the situation is affecting your mental wellness. What do you think? Maybe to Sarah first. What do you think? Are you seeing this in the
I think I will agree, because I think now mental health is a huge topic outside there, whether it's among students, it's among employee and all like that. I think especially the 2 years being locked down and, you know, restricted space. I know some people enjoy the space being at home and so on, but I think there's another group of people who really wanted to be out there, seeing their colleagues, being able to see people and so on. And I think, like what Nick mentioned earlier, there has been some downsizing, and, you know, I think Ani, you also mentioned about, you know, a lot of restructuring that has taken place over the organizations, where now when people are let go, they are not replaced. So the existing team member has to take up additional role. So I think that is also putting an added stress on people and so on. So it's very important for organizations to understand what role they play in managing the employees' mental health issues, like what contributes to mental health issue. Because nowadays people, they come to work, they also carry the burden from home, you know, kids being at home for those who have kids and so on. And the kind of stress, there could be people who have lost job in their house, where now they have to take over the care and so on, right? So there's a lot of things contributing to it. And when the organizations are not supporting that, and these people, these employees, they find another place, you know, through friends and so on, that has a better policy and whatever not, I think that's when this spectrum opens up. Should I consider of moving to another company that pays attention to mental health? And like what Nick's role is about, you know, culture and so on. It's very interesting now. One of my friends who recently joined a company that has positioned just to manage culture of people in the organization, where we don't hear those times. You know, it's part and parcel of HR's role to do this. But nowadays, companies are paying attention to the different background of people that's joining, people from different industry coming in, and how do they get along with the people or the culture of the organization. And meaning that it's not only about them getting accustomed to what the organization is all about, it's also continuously looking into the culture of the organization and evolving it, you know, like opening it up to the new thing, new learning and so on. So I think I will agree, mental health is definitely one of the reasons why people move. Even if they don't move, it's actually opening up their thinking cap that should I, yep.
Yeah, I do see all these cases where they actually leave because of the pressure. So, you know, the organization, they resize, they are resizing activities, and the fact that the job has been redistributed among all, so there are more things to do. So sometimes this has put in an additional layer of pressure to the talent. So my question also, and I'm thinking about, so how do we as an employer manage this in anticipation of this, you know, changes? Maybe Gordon, you have some thoughts about it. You know, when the mature talents have been, you know, transited out, and there are more and more younger generation coming in, and obviously, you know, the jobs might be redistributed or change. How can we as organization anticipate the expectation of receiving the younger generation, Gen X? No, not Gen X. Millennials.
All right. Okay, so when it comes to the pandemic that mentioned by Hani and you know, Sarah, okay, a lot of companies during the pandemic crisis, there's a lot of industrial, they're getting their employees taking pay cut or getting retrenchment. So that happened when the stress is already there.
Yes.
And added additional stress to that, and family, how to juggle between family and work at the same time. And if you were mentioned about how the employer is going to tackle this this issue, and when it comes to a new kind of graduates or new workforce coming into the workplace, and during this pandemic, I believe most of you have been experiencing that as well, where during pandemic, a lot working from home, and working from home as a fresh graduate, it could be a big stress for fresh graduate as well. And because you are actually disengaged with colleagues, you are becoming more task-oriented. You assign job, but lesser communications, lesser engagement. And back then, when a few years back, we were in the office, we were engaged with the team, you know, onboarding, team building. Okay, if you're switching it online, there will be discrepancy and something that can be different, even though if you're looking at, even though the fresh graduate is more tech savvy, or they say they are more engaged during the digital, but the human touch that lacking when you are onboarding or you're hiring a new person. And for the past few years, we are using the you know, we're doing online interview, you know, online onboarding, everything is online. And I believe most of the organization has noticed that as well. That's why they roll out a lot of engagement activities. For example, sending items, onboarding item, new joiner pack to your house. So that makes some sort of connections. But still, Hani, I do feel that is enough without personal one-to-one handover the job or guiding, giving motivational over the phone or personal.
Absolutely.
That is a challenges when you're working fully digital mode. You switch on digital mode and you forgot about going back to the benefits of meeting the person in person.
I agree. I also read in a research that actually the majority of Gen Z prefers to come back to the office.